Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young man. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Yu, and I am based out of Bali, Indonesia. I am an American, so I'm originally from the United States. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made my way into Bali, Indonesia, and how I became an entrepreneur and a grant writer, amongst many other things. So I originally was working on my PhD, and it was, I just remember working on my PhD, and it was really, really hard. And there was a point in time where I was going back and forth with my dissertation committee, and it was very difficult to get a certain topic of study approved. And there was a part of me that just really needed to go out. So I decided to redesign my study, and I decided I wanted to just go to Bali. I wanted to interview famous people, collect their life stories, and be done with my dissertation. But little did I know that it would open up a whole new series of journeys for me. So when I arrived on the island of Bali in 2014, it was a really amazing experience for me because it had been many, many years since I had been on the continent of Asia. I had studied a little bit about the Balinese because there is a class that a lot of PhD students have to take, and it's called qualitative research. And in that course, there is a very famous piece that is written by Clifford Geertz on Balinese cockfighting, and it's used as an example on how do you do thick description and ethnography. So I learned about the Balinese in that way, and I remember being in that course thinking, what does cockfighting have anything to do with what I want to do, which was to understand leadership? But little did I know I'd end up in Bali, and I would be researching people from various walks of life to better understand how people on this island of Bali exercise change in a very unique context. While I was on the island of Bali, I met my friend Wira. Wira is Balinese, and he was very interested in some of the things that I was doing. And he took me on his motorbike and to all of my interviews. He made sure I got to all of my interviews. And in some cases, he volunteered to translate. But we went around the island of Bali together, gathering the stories of different change makers. We met famous people like artists. A lady that wanted to preserve Legong dance. We met a man named Agung Rai, who is the owner of the Agung Rai Museum of Art, and we learned about how he created a museum to preserve the Balinese culture. We interviewed Balinese politicians and what they're doing to protect Balinese culture. I met with we met with royal families, people who started nonprofit organizations to advance the needs of women, Balinese women, uh, physically disabled individuals who are often shunned by their families because being physically disabled is being seen as sort of a sign of bad karma. Individuals that do mental health, um, artists, people who paint, people who dance, farmers, people who know how to make things like tempeh, who know how to grow things like cacao and transform cacao to chocolate. So we had some very, very interesting experiences, and I learned a lot when I was doing my dissertation. And this experience had a very profound impact on me. It taught me a lot about the importance of nature, and how nature provides for us, and how we could be better people if we mimicked the process of nature. If we see in nature how things just happen, how plants just grow. It taught me a lot about how to trust myself. I learned a lot about the power of community and how relationships make things happen on the island of Bali. I live in a traditional family compound, shared by 25 people, which is quite amazing, and how people help each other and support each other. It's very different from my life in the West, and I also learned about the importance of spirituality and having a sense of purpose when you live your life. And my experience doing research and meeting people in Bali had such a profound impact on me that I wanted to do something more. I wanted to bring this experience to other people. And so my friend Weera and we started an organization that eventually became known as 5 Pillar Experiences, where we work with groups to create interesting international education experiences. So we work with universities to bring study abroad courses, and so we have work with professors that have different areas of subject matter expertise. Some are mental health professionals, others are leadership, education. We've had environmental science, art, music, the humanities. The idea is you can teach anything on the island of Bali, and they provide the expertise, and we support their course content with interesting cultural experiences. And what sets us apart from other tourist companies is that we have something called local heroes. So if you go to our office, you'll see a tree, but instead of ornaments, you'll see pictures of individuals that we work with to create experiences. And so we take people to meet these local heroes. The people are the destination, because we believe that people don't live in Bali, but Bali instead lives in the people. And we create opportunities where there can be cultural exchange, where people can share their unique stories with visitors, and visitors can be enriched by these experiences and go back to their home countries as changed individuals, because they experienced Balinese culture in a very unique way. So that's something that has been very, very dear to my heart. Throughout my time at 5 Pillar, there were certain things that happened that also created opportunities for me to go in other directions. In 2017, there was a volcanic eruption that happened in Bali, and it led to a situation where I had to go to Singapore to work for a while, and then COVID happened. And then after I left Singapore, I came back to Bali, where I've done everything from writing books to giving talks to even grant writing. And so today I split my time with between Five Pillar and then also writing grants, where I support very interesting change-making initiatives in places like Africa and the United States. I write grants for everything from clean cooking in Kenya to electrical vehicles and solar power charging in South Africa, to carbon financing software, to helping Black colleges and universities to preserve their library materials, to helping others open dance studios, to disaster relief work in Haiti, to making sure that children that come from families that are at poverty line or below have good access to dental care so that they can have a good education and a bright future. So these are some of the things that I do as a person. Thank you very much, Gertrude, and I'll just turn it back over to you.
Ellen, what an exciting and intriguing life you lead. Just listening to you speak as being somebody who has a passion for travel, I can see that you've really harnessed your passion to see the world, and you're doing so much good in communities as you go along the way. So your journey has taken you across diverse cultures and communities. How has this diversity shaped your understanding of self-love infused leadership? And how tailor your approach to be inclusive and effective across the different cultural contexts?
Yeah, so I have written a book on love and leadership, and what I have learned about love from being in on the island of Bali is that love creates. So what is love is a very interesting question to start off with, because often we get taught certain ideas about love that we don't know exactly why, but they are very, what we think we're taught about love isn't actually what love really is. We come across certain experiences that confuse us. For example, some of us that grow up, it's a very common in many Asian households for a parent to beat their children, and they might say something like, I'm doing this because I love you, even though that may be misunderstood, because what they're doing is engaging in an act of terrorism to get you to be fearful and to comply. What I understand love to be is when we come together as human beings, and when we support each other's spiritual growth. And when we do this, we have opportunities to acquire new perspectives. So when we build relationships, like I build a relationship with my friend Weera, what we are able to do is see ourselves in other people. And we can, and the values that may be very important to another person, we realize, wow, these values are actually also important to me. So Weera represents the Balinese. And what I understand about Balinese is that they have a very interesting perspective on nature. They are very close to nature. They have a lot of ceremonies where they honor different aspects of nature. They value community, and they value spirituality. But in a Western context, I was not able to explore how these things are important to me. But through my interaction with somebody from a different culture, I was able to acquire a perspective that really shaped what I believe as a person, and the type of difference that I should make in this world. So I think love had a very important role to play. It offered me some perspectives and understanding that made me rethink what love is and what leadership is, and what I think is fundamentally important for us as humans, building communities together, that we need each other, and we can through the power of love, we can support each other's spiritual growth, and we can be better people, we can be better leaders, and we can actually mobilize communities through supporting each other's spiritual growth. And the reason why I say that is because we, as human beings, we have a natural tendency to want to fly. We want to soar. We don't just want to survive. We really want to thrive on this planet. And when we can focus on our energies on helping each other thrive, we can accomplish so much as people.
Wow, that is so true. And I really appreciate your concept of love and how you've explained it. I'm from Africa. I can relate to those beatings, growing up with tough love, parents wanting to make sure you are doing the right thing, but literally terrorizing their children is the right way to put it. So, in your book, you discuss leadership in the concept of global challenges. Can you share an example of how self-infused leadership has been critical in addressing diversity and inclusion issues within a community or an organization that you've worked with?
Sure. So most recently, I worked with my friend Mel in Singapore. I was part of a training organization. So my colleague Melody and I were trainers, and we were involved in developing. We were involved in developing and delivering a program that was it was a tech upskilling program. So one of the things that Singapore is interested in doing is diversifying their talent, diversifying what people do, because a lot of people in Singapore go into banking because it's the the financial sector is where they know where the money is at. But they realize that there are other skills that are very important. Having good tech skills is very important, and Singapore is relatively weak in that area. So if you were to, if you were to check out a high tech company, you'll notice that there are a lot of tech workers that are from places like India that have a huge market. And so what Singapore would like to do is groom, like local people to become, software engineers, programmers, that sort of thing. So in this particular program, we put together a program that was designed to help people, to help create group camaraderie. And I'm not sure what we did, but it definitely informed my design of the program, creating. And what I did, with this understanding of love in my head, was I worked very hard to create opportunities where people could interact together. So we had, like, for example, we taught design thinking as a group building activity where people had to listen to the needs and concerns of other people. And then they had to use design thinking to get at the root cause of their problem. And then, design some sort of, design a gift that would address that problem that they were hearing. So sometimes, you may hear like this one individual was, may had a problem, avoiding certain people. He was just being facetious, but like the person that was listening to him designed an app so that he could avoid people. So it was a very humorous activity that allowed people to listen to each other and to express their creativity in unique ways. We do things like collective painting, where people will draw on each other's paper so that we could understand, what is the collective group consciousness? What do we say, or how do we feel as a group? So a lot of the work that I do is involved in building groups and building communities through my leadership activities. And what it did was it instilled this belief that we are a unified group. And what happened in this particular cohort was that they made sure that they had each other's backs, that they prepared for exams together. They stuck up for each other if a situation emerged at work that they didn't feel was right, but the camaraderie that came a result that that came as a result of our training was definitely played a role in that. So I'm very convinced just from leading this particular course that love is very important. It does create situations where people will help each other, work with each other, rather than just go to work, do their work and go home. I think having good relationships in a working environment in a working environment is very critical. It's very important.
Awesome. So, reflecting on your experiences in places as
Hmm.
varied as Iowa City, Seattle, Singapore, and
Hmm.
Bali, what unique challenges and opportunities does diversity
Hmm.
when trying to create change through love and leadership?
Yeah, the unique challenges. If we're talking about diversity, yeah. So one of the things that I was, yeah, when I lived in the United States, and this was more than 10 years ago. Um, and of course, and the United States has evolved significantly since I have left. But in the United States, I was as somebody who was Asian American. Um, I was always in a very unique position to bring people together, to facilitate friendships, and that has always been my role. And so and it was something that I was very good at. I was good at getting people that would not normally hang out together to hang out, and so that's what I felt I excelled at. However, like in at the time I was living in the United States. Um, we I had a very great education at University of San Diego, and we did talk about things like racism and diversity, and we there was a very interesting group dynamics course that I took where we had to examine each other's behavior, and we would learn some of the biases and assumptions through just observing people's behavior. So I'll just give you a few examples, like the teacher the professor comes into the class and says, "This is your class. What do you want to do?" And then the class is silent for a while, and then there are 4 or 5 people expressing discomfort uh, in the midst of all this silence. And then you may hear somebody that will suddenly say, "Oh, I just noticed that the first 4 people that spoke were men." And so it was just very interesting what I learned in this particular class. Um, I learned that often, we have a very ambivalent relationship with leadership and power. As an Asian American or as a female or whatever, we may resent white men and the power that they have, but we also put them in a position of authority. And this is something that we need to be more reflective about. But so when I was living in the United States, yeah, I had a really great opportunity to really challenge certain assumptions that I had about race, and that was very very interesting. When I moved to Singapore, and Singapore is a very different place. I wanted to live in Singapore because it was English speaking and it was a Chinese majority, and I thought, wow, I could fit in because I'm Chinese ethnic and I speak English. It should be easy, right? Well, in Singapore, it's a very different environment. They don't encourage dissent. They don't really encourage people to protest. And if you talk about race, you might be accused of instigating disorder. And so there's a lot about race that you can't talk about. I can absolutely talk about the privilege of being Chinese, for example. I can talk about, how easy it would be for me to become a Singaporean national because I'm Chinese descent. But I'm not, but if I were to talk about how how the system is actually, very, very racist, that's going to, that type of conversation often gets shut down in a working environment. I remember being in an office environment where I did bring up diversity, and it was a discussion that was just, I felt where I was just silenced. In Bali, it's a very different dynamic, I think, because we have there's a lot of white people in particular that go to Bali for whatever reason. They go to Bali because they really want to experience their white privilege. It's very, they come to Bali with this expectation of wanting to live wealthy and wanting to live like a king, and they have this mentality that, that local people have less resources and that they are kind of there to serve them. So, so this idea of like villa building, going to spas, that's a different dynamic than some of the other places. So these are certain challenges that we need to think about and create dialogue around.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you talk about losing love over fear each time in environments where diversity might lead to fear of the other. How do you encourage leaders and communities to choose love? And can you share a practical example?
Well, when I talk about love and fear, it is kind of related to sort of this idea. I know they talk a little bit about this in people who are familiar with the law of attraction. There is this emotional guidance system. But if you are experiencing fear, if you are experiencing anxiety, you are most definitely not experiencing love. And that's why I brought up the beating, the corporal punishment example. A lot of us are really choosing fear instead of love when we are in relationships. We have fear of being left alone, being by ourselves, and it's more important to be with somebody than to really understand what love actually is. We are often conditioned to experience fear. It's a natural survival mechanism that we have, and maybe fear isn't all that bad. It tells you that you're not there yet, but fear is definitely, from my point of view, the opposite of love. And if we were to look at at progress, if we are able to experience love along the way, in my opinion, we're heading in the right direction. And if we're experiencing fear, we're probably not headed in the right direction. So I'm just trying to think of an example of love. I love living. I love living on the island of Bali. I love it when I love the sense of community that we have here. There's this community on Bali taught me a lot about love. And I haven't been able to replicate the sense of community in other places that I have lived in, like in Singapore, where people are much more individualistic and they're much more concerned about making enough money and supporting themselves. But on the island of Bali, there's a certain peace that knowing that you are very well protected. Your community has your back. Nature has your back. You have a feeling of support that. I think in other more developed countries, they don't have that experience, and it's very interesting that things have to be in places like Singapore. Things have to be perfect. If things are not perfect, if things are not predictable, then people get very anxious. People get nervous, and people get fearful, and it's very different in a place like Bali, where there's a strong community, a strong sense of being part of something that is much bigger than yourself, that allows you to experience peace, that allows you to feel sane, even when there is a lot of chaos around you. Did I answer your question?
No, you definitely have. I can so relate to everything you're saying.
Okay.
Uh, I've been to Bali several times, and it's almost tangible. You can feel it in the air. The
Mm-hmm.
love there, the way people relate to you. It doesn't matter where you come from, you can feel it. So
Mm-hmm.
your workshops focus on nurturing creativity and insight.
Mm-hmm.
You see the role of diversity in fostering creative solutions. And
Mm-hmm.
how does a love infused leadership style facilitate this across different cultural landscapes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just thinking about some of the activities around cultural exchange that we've had. So something that we do quite a lot in some of the programs that we lead here in Bali is that we use the World Cafe format a lot, which is a dialogue method that was developed by a lady named Juanita Brown. Um, and what the idea of this type of activity is to surface the wisdom of the crowd, the wisdom of the group, and people would be divided into different areas where they would have conversations on different topics, and then throughout the 2 hours they would move tables, and they would add on to what previous groups were talking about, and then at the end of the day, like the all of those ideas would be put together, and they would be shared. But you have to have diversity. You have to have diverse perspectives, and I think when we create opportunities where people, where when you bring like a group of American students that have a much more competitive perspective, or a group from China where people are taught to compete, and you connect them with a group of people that have a very different perspective on how to address problems, where they may use things like consensus decision making, or they may bring spirituality into it. You have different ideas, and that can flourish. There isn't a whole lot of difference between money and God, is something that I learned when we were doing a what do you call it, a one of those world cafes. So each group, came up with a picture. There was this one picture where we talked about the importance of God, nature, as well as spirituality, and then God, nature, and community. And then the American group replaced the God or the spirit with money in their scenario. It was just very interesting how they were able to make connections and work with ways of thinking that were provided by somebody from a different culture, and help them to think. If we all think in the same way, if you just put a bunch of white men in a room, it's going to be, the result is going to be, they're all going to be very stupid, because they don't have other outside ideas to work with. It's very important. Like, diversity really, really does matter.
That's interesting. When I listen to you talk, I can see that you living in different countries has really
Hmm.
influenced the way of viewing and seeing the world, and appreciating diversity in a very, very unique way. Now, you spoke about organic systems change.
Hmm.
How important is diversity in achieving such a change? And how can leaders ensure that diverse voices are heard and included in the process? Let's talk about organic systems change now.
Okay, so when we're talking about organic systems, it's basically self-management. You don't need somebody, calling all the shots. It just, organic as in how the human body functions. Like every cell in the human body has all of the information that they need to do their job. They have all the DNA that is there, and then they are able to self organize and form things like tissues and organs. And then you have, the skeletal system, and then you have the muscular system, the renal system, the the digestive system, the neural system. And so the idea is that, as human beings, we have the capability to self organize. We have the capability to work together and collaborate, in a way that is autonomous and in a way that is respectful to each of us. Like we know the role that we are there to play, and then we play it, and we contribute to the best of our ability. And there's nobody that needs to tell us how to do it. So that's the organic style of leadership. I think again the diversity is important, in the sense that it helps us to see things that we would not see. It helps us to see things that we would otherwise not see. It One of the things that I really like about living in Indonesia is that there are many different religions, not just the Balinese Hindu religion, but Islam and Christianity. Each of these different religions, gives us a different it's a different perspective on how to be a good person, and there are various opportunities. There are things that we can take from each of these different religions, to help us to build and grow. And if I was not exposed to things like Ramadan, or the fasting process, I'd be a different person. I have opportunities to learn and to try things for myself, to experiment, to play with ideas. I'm a very richer person because I have diversity. I have access to many different ways of thought. I have much more flexibility, much more creativity, and many ways to be amazed and appreciative of being a human. It expands my consciousness. I'm able to grow as a human being, and I think that's how love works. It's like when we create relationships, it's like you all of a sudden have access to a whole new world of thinking. You have access, where you get exposed to different ideas, but at the same time, you also see yourself, within this new context, and you're able to work in such a way that you're able to shape yourself in such a way that you're no longer the same person that you were. I like to think of this. I used to talk about this thing called the cookie analogy. You know. It's like, what diversity does is it helps me to be the most delicious cookie. So if you think of a cookie, think of, like, all of the different things that are part of the cookie. Like there is the chocolate chips, there is the butter, there is the flour, and then all of these things get mixed in such a way that it doesn't taste like the egg, it doesn't taste like the flour, it doesn't taste like the sugar or the salt. It's like all of these things have been fused together to form the person that I am. And I can't, if I can't just take somebody out of that. It's part of my identity. So at the end of the day, it's really about who we are as people, and diversity's potential to really help us to expand and to be the most delicious cookies that we can be. And the more people that we have access to, the more different ways of thinking that we have access to, the more ingredients go into that cookie to, to help us to be, to help contribute to the amazing flavor that it is.
I love that. The analogy of the cookie is really good. It's so true. So my last
Mm,
question for you
mhm,
is, looking forward, how do you see the evolution of love-infused leadership
mhm.
in an increasingly interconnected and diverse global landscape?
Well, I think it's a very interesting question because I think there's a lot of things going on in the world. A lot of different things are happening. Of course, climate change is in full effect at the moment, but I see that, I do see that the next generation, the younger generations, are definitely much more open to diversity than previous generations. They are more interested in, in popular cultures outside of America. They're more inclined to listen to K-pop music or Afro beats or Latin music. Uh, I think, they're more interested in trying foods from other culture. They're more interested in traveling. So I think there is an interest in people wanting to explore, and I think diversity in many ways is in. At the same time, there are other things that are happening, like the war in Russia and Ukraine, and the deterioration of relationships between places like the United States and Europe and China. So there's that. There are certain geopolitical tensions that are pulling us in the other direction. But I would like to say that overall, we're a global, we're truly a global society. We're able to connect with anybody on the planet through technology, and so I think there is definitely a lot of potential for love infused leadership to grow because of the technology and the context and the way ideas can spread relatively quickly. And it's something that we need if we're going to address a lot of the problems that are going to be very, very difficult to solve. And I have to be practical. Things like climate change, I'm not sure how we're going to solve that problem, but having love infused leadership will at least increase the probability that we can move closer to that, to an end goal. But at the same time, I think it's very important that we be able to feel calm, we be able to feel sane in a world that is, we're part of a civilization that is kind of on the decline. And it's important that we stick together, and we face the situation together, and with a sense of love.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, Alan.
Okay.
Your theories, your concepts are absolutely fascinating, and
Hmm.
really have opened up a door that people can explore in terms of a different way of being, choosing love over fear, embracing our diversity and our differences. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
You're welcome.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is touching on a wide range of subjects from people from all over the world, celebrating our differences, celebrating diversity. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. That's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay